What's up, 49er faithful, and welcome to any Saints fans that might be joining us today, along with anyone that just loves football. The game between the 49ers and Saints will go down as one of the all-time greatest regular season games. Both teams seemingly scored at will against the other, and it saw two 10-win teams allow 40 or more points for the first time in NFL history. It was not a game for fans of defense, but considering that this game saw two of the best offensive minds in the game, along with two quarterbacks playing at an extremely high level, it's not surprising to see an offensive explosion. However, what was surprising, especially to 49ers fans, was to see the league's best pass defense, by a wide margin, get shredded by Drew Brees, giving up season highs in points, yards, and touchdowns. I know I've seen a lot of discussion and people have been asking, how did Drew Brees and the Saints put up that many points and throw that easily against our defense? Well, we're going to dive into some game film and see what happened. The first play we're going to look at is going to be the very first touchdown of the game. One thing the 49ers will tend to do is when teams start approaching the red zone, we'll play a lot more cover 2 zone. So, in anticipation of this in the scripted plays, New Orleans is going to come out with two different cover 2 beating concepts. For sake of time, I won't dive too deep into those, but they have a smash concept to the 2 receiver side, and an Ohio concept to the 3 receiver side, both being vertical stretches of a cloud or corner in the flat defender. And Cook will be running a deep over route. One thing to understand is that the 49ers oftentimes play a matching cover 3, which is different from your standard spot drop cover 3. In a spot drop, players are given landmarks to go to in a passing situation and then will look to cover any players in their zone. In a matching situation, there are numerous rules to how players are to play different routes. One component of this in our defense is that the backside linebacker is responsible for deep over or crossing routes. Think of the highlights we saw of Reuben Foster covering Tavon Austin across the field. That was him matching the deep over route from the backside. The caveat to this is that if a hook curl defender has a vertical release down the seam, they are responsible first for matching that and squeezing the seam. So, one common way to defeat a matching 3 is simply to run a receiver up the seam and then bring a shallow crossing or in route through that zone. Again, to protect against this, the backside hook curl is responsible to match those shallow crossing routes. I know that's a lot to digest, but it will make sense in just a second. Here, the 49ers are playing their matching 3 zone. As the play develops, you'll see Cook releases inside of Jimmy Ward, who is the hook curl defender on that side. So Ward does not match. If Cook had released up the seam, he would have matched. Fred Warner peeks over to that side and sees the vertical release from Cook, but doesn't notice that it's inside of Ward. So he takes his eyes off Cook and is now looking at the number 2 receiver for a potential shallow crossing route. When he sees the route break out, he doesn't recognize what's happening. He should immediately bail and pick up the deep crossing route, but instead looks to read Drew Brees. Because he hasn't gained enough depth, Cook is going to break open right behind Fred Warner. Brees is Brees and he gets the ball out on time. He hits his 5th step in a hitch and the ball is out. Harris takes a poor angle on the tackle and we give up a 28-yard score. So the very next drive, the Saints are going to be in almost the same position on the field. This time, Sean Payton is going to plan to beat cover 3. This play is very similar to the one where Lamar Jackson threw for a touchdown against the 49ers. They're looking to hit Michael Thomas on this play. They come out in 12 personnel with 1 back and 2 tight ends. What's important to note is where we identify the strength of the formation, which we put to the 2 tight end side. New Orleans motions Cook across the formation, and from here you can see the 49ers defense rotating. They are changing the strength call of the formation. Harris drops back and is making a call to Ward. What he's doing is communicating the change in strength. So Harris will now go from being the box safety to the deep middle safety. And Ward should switch to being a hook curl defender in a cover 3 buzz or backer in the flat, with Al-Shaair being the backer in the flat. We again should be in our matching 3 zone. From here, the Saints are going to run a verticals concept to the 3 receiver side, which is a deep horizontal stretch of the defense. and then they'll look to hit Michael Thomas on a deep over route by first running play action to that side and then running the tight end on a corner route. This is what's called a speedo concept. At the snap, we have a busted coverage. Both Ward and Harris occupy the deep middle zone. Ward never adjusted his coverage to the shift by the offense. If you look, we only have 3 underneath defenders and have no strong side hook curl. Remember how we match verticals with hook curls? If Ward plays his coverage, he would have matched Cook. Nick Bosa got good pressure, but with the busted coverage, the play has no chance. One thing I will say is that the 49ers defense really missed Jaquiski Tartt in this past game. If you aren't familiar, the 49ers defensive line will play what's called a wide 9 most of the time. What this means is that the defensive ends play very wide in what we call a 9 technique, hence the wide 9. One thing that this means that's different from some traditional 4-3 defenses is the run fit of the box safety will be different. In ours, the box safety is responsible for the C gap, or the gap between the tackle and the tight end, since the defensive end will be wider than the tight end. We play a gap scheme defense, which means each player in the box is responsible for covering up a gap, shown here. New Orleans is going to run one of the simplest runs there is. This is day one of high school football stuff, which isn't meant as an insult at all, just meaning defenses shouldn't be fooled by this at all. It's a simple 26 dive. Some might call it 24 dive, which just means the 2 back in the 6 hole. John Gruden would call this a 96 dive. They're simply going to look to block out of the 6 hole and run the running back up inside. Bosa does a good job at the snap, not allowing the tight end to beat him across his face and get up on Harris. From here, you can see Harris is clean and should fill the C gap. Witherspoon then will have outside contain. But Murray will cut to the outside. Harris still should maintain his gap integrity. However, he tries to make a play and tries to do someone else's job. He vacates his gap, and when Witherspoon comes up in his lane, Murray now has a cutback, which he takes to set up New Orleans for their 3rd touchdown of the game at the 3-yard line. After the play from the All-22, we can see Witherspoon visibly upset with Harris. Harris has to do his job. The Patriots have become famous for this saying, but it's so true in football. You do your job and let the other guys do theirs. When you play a quarterback like Drew Brees, sometimes that means you have to do things to hide what you're doing on defense, but it can put extra strain on your players. Here, by trying to hide what we're doing, we're going to miss more elementary football stuff. New Orleans comes out with Taysom Hill in a wingback formation. We show cover 3 zone. This is further shown when New Orleans brings a wide receiver in motion and no one follows him. However, we are in man coverage, and what happened here was when the receiver goes in motion, Witherspoon picks up the number 1 receiver, K'Wan Williams picks up the motioning receiver until he enters the formation, and then he will pick up Taysom Hill, and then Sherman will switch from the tight end to the receiver, and Harris will now come down into the box and pick up the tight end, with Ward dropping as the deep middle safety. Warner will be on Murray in the backfield. With Hill in a wingback position, one thing the 49ers defense must be aware of and communicate here is the potential for crossing patterns, so that they won't interfere with each other on routes, and so the defenders are supposed to make sure that they are at different depths from the line of scrimmage, between inside and outside guys, just to make sure this won't happen. Williams starts out this way, but then drops back right next to Warner. From there, the Saints are just going to run Murray into the flat off of play action. They'll have a run fake to the boundary side and then have Murray just continue on in the flat, and Taysom Hill will sell the run fake by coming across the formation. Since Williams is on Hill, he looks to cross the formation and pick up his man, but he and Warner run into each other. This will give Murray enough room to be open in the flat and for Warner to be just late on the tackle. This should be a simple 2-yard gain. Instead, it goes for 30 yards. So Saints fans will really like this play. Sometimes it wasn't bad defense, it was just well-timed calls by Peyton and Drew Brees being Drew Brees. Here we're going to run Tampa 2 zone. You do this in the red zone because that allows for 5 underneath and 2 deep defenders, but also protects the middle of the field, which is susceptible in a cover 2. The Tampa 2 differs from regular cover 2 in that the deep safeties will play much wider than normal, and the middle defender will be tasked with matching the deepest route down the middle of the field. Sean Payton had a well-timed call here, as he's going to dial up two cover two beating concepts, similar to what we talked about on the first play. They're going to run an Ohio concept to the 3 receiver side, and a smash concept to the 2 receiver side. The smash can be run a couple of different ways, but this is pretty common, where they're going to run a corner route from the receiver, and then have the running back on an out route. This will put the cloud defender, Emmanuel Mosley, in a vertical stretch. They then run a vertical route down the seam in case this isn't Tampa 2. Brees is Brees, and he works his play to perfection. He first is going to drop back and look to the seam route. He sees Warner has matched this route well as the Tampa defender. He does something so simple, but it's incredible. He gives a slight pump fake to that route. That's to hold the hook defender Greenlaw. You'll see Greenlaw takes just one false step because of the pump. He then turns and reads Mosley, who is playing soft on the corner route, so he hits Kamara. The pump fake he put to hold Greenlaw was just enough to give Kamara the ability to pick up the last few inches he needed to convert this 3rd and 6 to set up their 4th touchdown of the game. Then Brees just beats us with an incredibly accurate throw. We had held up pretty well on defense in the second half, only allowing one scoring drive, which was a field goal. The other field goal was after the interception, and the defense didn't allow a first down. Here, I won't go into everything, but they just run Michael Thomas on a deep over route, and we're in man coverage with K'Wan Williams on him. Williams does just what he's supposed to do. With deep middle help, he undercuts the route. He's in great position, but Brees drops an absolute dime to Michael Thomas over K'Wan Williams. Now, Saints fans won't like this, but they were upset about some officiating calls in this game. Well, here's one for 49ers fans to be upset about. Richard Sherman was in position to tackle Thomas, or at least slow him down, but gets plowed over from behind. That is one of the worst missed blocks in the back I've ever seen. It's made all the worse by the fact there should be 2 referees looking right there, because it's literally right near the point of the catch. You can see Sherman get up pleading for a flag. This should have been a first down at the Saints' 49-yard line. Instead, it sets them up deep in the red zone and sets up their first touchdown in over 30 minutes of football. This next play is frustrating as a 49ers fan because it's literally the same play from the same formation that I just showed 2 plays earlier. They're running the exact same play. Ohio to the 3 side, smash to the 2 side with Kamara, and a seam route. Here, Saleh has adjusted his call and called man coverage. Witherspoon has been playing great all year, but he should recognize this formation and understand what's coming. Instead, he gets beat on the corner route for a touchdown. Then, there's just some unfortunate things. Sherman went out of the game with a hamstring. In hindsight, he probably should have stayed on the ground. Instead, he gets up and gets off the field. The problem was that it put Mosley coming onto the field late, and he's coming on from the opposite sideline. So the Saints hurrying up just catch him. He never sees Ted get out wide, and Drew Brees isn't Colin Kaepernick, and he sees it, and they get set up again deep in our territory. Again, not to make Saints fans upset or sound like I'm blaming the refs, but here the Saints get a pass interference call on 3rd down that extends their drive. I feel bad for Solomon Thomas here. He actually gets pressure in a key moment. But look how he gets held. I'll rewind it and watch how much he gets slowed down. At worst, this should be offsetting penalties. At best, Thomas should have a sack and set up 4th and long, and we would never need Kittle's heroic. So now, trying to force the issue, Saleh is going to dial up a blitz and get burned. Because the Saints come out in a 4-by-1 formation, we're going to try and overload the weak side. Behind it, we're going to play 3 deep and 2 underneath. And then Bosa is going to be on a peel rush, where he'll peel off his rush to cover the running back should he release outside. Here, the Saints are just going to run a clearing route from the inside receiver, and then run a crossing route underneath. As Brees drops back, he looks off Fred Warner on the seam route, which opens up the crossing route. We don't get home with the pressure, and Brees is able to score a touchdown with the help of some poor tackling. From the end zone, we'll see 2 things. 1, we do a terrible job of executing this blitz. This might be the result of losing D Ford earlier in the game and Solomon Thomas now playing edge, but there's some confusion. Ward should either be coming in between Thomas and Buckner or looping inside Greenlaw. Instead, he's trying to rush up our own guys' butts and is essentially blocking himself. Because we don't get Ward on a rush, Kamara is able to come across, which big props to Kamara on the blitz pickup because Greenlaw had Brees dead to rights. But we still had the numbers on that side to overload the protection. Instead, we don't get home and give up the lead with 53 seconds left in the game. Well, there it is, guys. There's a lot more to show, especially if you're a Saints fan and you made it all the way through the video. But, Brees and the Saints offense made some really good plays. I just didn't get to show all of them because this is a video more about the 49ers, so I'm focused on what our defense didn't execute. In all, I'm not too worried after this game. Our defense has been really solid all year and hasn't had too many of these types of things happen. I'm glad it happened now and the offense was able to still pick up the win so that we get a great learning experience and still take the number 1 seed in the rankings right now. In all, it was a rough game for our defense, but I'm confident we'll get things cleaned up and come out ready to roll going forward. As always, you can like and subscribe, and if you'd like to support the channel in any way, I'll have links in the description for ways you can do that. And until next time, go Niners!